sophomores, Adam Gray and Nicholas DeFazio, and you guys can go up and sit there, and then people can ask you questions. First of all, I wanted to ask, does anybody have any comments about the Yes Men and their hilarious prank, I guess we would call it. Has anybody ever seen anything that the Yes Men have done before? Yeah. So anyway, I guess that just points to the ludicrous situation that we're in. Does anybody know what the Second Amendment actually says? It's a very long and complicated statement, and I'll read it to you. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, and the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Pardon?
Microphone.
Can you all hear me?
No, you can't be recorded unless you're on the mic.
Oh, it can't get recorded. Oh, well, I didn't realize that. But what about the kids?
No, that's not true.
That's all right.
Okay.
It'd be good if you could use the microphone.
You should hear you better. Use the microphone.
Anyway.
We can hear you better.
Okay. So, Nick and Adam are with us tonight to talk about kids and how they're feeling about gun violence and how they feel the safety measures that are being taken in their school, how adequate or inadequate they are. But before we get started, I just wanted to state some figures that I'm sure we've all been hearing over and over and over again on TV. But I'm going to just run through them quickly as food for thought. Since Columbine, there have been 208 school shootings. 187,000 school children have been exposed to gun violence. There are an average of 10 school shootings per year. And the worst 10 massacres since Columbine, which left 15 dead, are 2007 Virginia Tech, 33 dead. 2012 Sandy Hook, 27 dead. 2018 Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, 17 dead. 2015 Umpqua Community College in Oregon, 10 dead. In 2005 Red Lake, Minnesota, 7 dead. In Oikos University in California in 2012, 7 dead. 2006 West Nickel Mine School, Pennsylvania, 6 dead. 2008 Northern Illinois University, 6 dead. 2014 Marysville, Washington, 5 dead. And 22 University of Arizona, 4 dead. There's also an argument that I have heard from people debating whether or not firearms kill more people than other instruments. And a statement that has been made is that knives kill 4 times as many people as rifles. And when they did this category, they included all sharp instruments and knives. But there were only 374 deaths by rifles compared to the 1,604 people killed by cutting instruments. However, that did not include all firearms. So that drastically raises the number, but 73% of all murders are committed by firearms of one sort or another. So we don't have a gun problem. Anyway, so I thought I would start asking some questions of our guests and see what they have to say about their school situation. And then anybody from the audience that would like to ask questions, please feel free to do so. So I guess my first question would be, do you feel safe in your school?
Yes, because we live in a good neighborhood. I mean, it can still happen, but we are safe here compared to other places in the United States.
I can agree that I do feel safe in our school. I don't personally know many situations where there have been great acts of violence in Bethlehem in general. so I can't say that I would be afraid of something happening, even though it's definitely possible that it could happen.
Would you consider Parkland School a school that was not in, say, a middle upper class neighborhood? I'm throwing you a curveball, I think. The Sandy Hook in Connecticut, very, very well-to-do communities. So, just for the record, we are fortunately a well-to-do community in Bethlehem and a privileged community, but so were these other two communities that I'm just naming off the cuff here. How long have you been aware of the problem of school shootings in your short lives?
I mean, since middle school, I've heard about it. Elementary school, I would have heard about it, but, I mean, elementary school, I heard about it, but I wouldn't remember because I was too young to understand. But middle school, I remember about a lot of shooting was going on.
I feel that when you're younger, you don't really take into consideration things that are going around the world, or just in your country in general. You are too young to understand, and people just kind of shield you from all the dangers that happen, because they want to make your life perfect and la-di-da, rainbows, butterflies. Everyone loves it. I just got off track. Okay. Okay. So the whole, what?
Shielded.
When did you
Yes.
first start?
Yeah,
So
when were you first aware?
when I first started actually really comprehending about these problems is probably in middle school, when they were actually starting to come to light and they actually had a much greater impact. There were more kids that were being threatened by it in all neighborhoods, and there were overall many more deaths that were occurring as years went on.
Do you have lockdown drills, and if so, could you describe what happens during a lockdown drill?
So we have a few lockdown drills, and we had one a couple of weeks ago. And typically what happens is I had one in my ceramics class, and there are a lot of windows in my ceramics class. So what we do is close all the blinds in my class, and then at the door there's a black, paper, and they put that down so that whoever is going by can't see inside. So nobody can see inside the room, and then we go on either side of the corner. So even if they could see inside the room, we're on a separate corner so that they can see us. So there's a little prohibition.
And Adam is in a lab school, so he's in the school within the school. Nick is not in the lab school. Is it the same situation in your classes?
Yeah, it is very similar in the sense that everyone, all the doors are closed. If teachers see any students outside of the halls, they try to get them in. But if some kids are in the bathrooms, then they're locked out of classrooms and they have to remain in the bathrooms. But it's the same deal. If your classroom does have blinds, you put down the blinds, doors are shut and locked, and just little black screens are put over the door windows so that people cannot see in, and all the students and the teacher go to a corner of the room where it's not visible from the door, which is normally like the left corner closest to the door.
Unfortunately, a lot of the kids talk during these drills and they don't take them very seriously. So, there'll be talking going on, or kids will just be laughing, eating, whatever, and they won't take us seriously. So that is very unfortunate.
Just off the record, do you remember what you were told when you were in elementary school? What kind of language did they use when they did a lockdown drill?
I can't remember.
It was very demanding. They made it very straight to the point. They said, just don't talk or else you're going to the principal's office. Stay quiet in the corner of the room, and the lights are going to be off, and just stay quiet, and if you hear some sort of wrangling on the door, don't be scared. That's what we were told, and that's pretty much what we did.
And did they tell you that this was practicing for a gun incident?
They never specifically said gun incident, they said intruders of any kind going into the school.
Okay. My 6-year-old grandson told me that they tell the kids that in case a large animal comes into the school or something bad comes into the school. So, anyway, that's what a kindergartner hears. What are some of the things the school has done or could do to make the students feel safer?
As you guys heard, I'm in the lab school, and in the lab school, we talk a lot more than the normal school does about these situations. In my science class, we took the whole period to talk about, the whole incident, and we, spent a lot of time talking about that. But I feel that Nick can talk about this, that in other classes, they don't talk about it, and they actually, tell us not to talk about it in classes.
Yeah, so the whole concept of anything to do with guns or any weapons in general, if you talk about it in school, it's a big deal and you probably shouldn't do it because teachers, I guess, don't want you to talk about world problems. So I am also in an AP class. If you don't know, it's college level course, and that is probably the one class that I am allowed to talk about any sort of current events that are going on that are bad. But we actually got called in by the principal to stop talking about it because it was such a sensitive topic. So I feel like, as I said before, our school can be safe, and you asked, could it be safer? It definitely could. Our school, when we go into lockdowns, just as Adam said before, it's not taken very seriously by many of the students, and everyone thinks it just can't happen because we're in a great community. Nothing bad can happen. Oh, there's no guns in our community. There are. And I just don't think people realize that. So, me personally, I don't know what could be done to make things safer. Maybe putting some sort of, just something more protective than a little piece of paper over a window might help. But honestly, to make people feel safer in a school is difficult because they don't want to feel like they're trapped at the same time.
Do you think that you would feel more safe if there were less guns out there and if assault rifles were harder to get?
I think that there should be no reason for somebody to have a fully automatic weapon. There is no need for it. You're not going to go hunting a deer or animals with it because it's, first off, just going to be too unnecessary. You only need one bullet to kill something. You don't need, a full magazine of 30 bullets. And also, it's fully automatic. I see no need for it. Pistols, on the other hand, I can understand that a bit more. So I see no need for assault weapons, but pistols a little bit more.
I have very similar feelings in that people do not need rapid-fire weapons. They were designed for a reason, the military. There was no reason why a normal civilian should be able to just lay down 180 bullets in the midst of a minute. It's not necessary. That is to say that if guns were harder to get and that they were taken away from the general public, that yes, it would make neighborhoods safer, but there are still those people out there who have other sources, quote unquote, that can get them illegally, and thus leading people kind of in a difficult place to where if you're not able to access the same level of guns, then you're not as protected. But in saying that, the people that do believe in that, I don't think realize that there's a police force. We have protection, or whatever, however, means to protect the general public from many of these different occurrences that could happen.
Have you heard discussions that in some states, there's a discussion about arming teachers to prevent a school shooting? Does that make sense to you to arm teachers?
I don't think we should arm teachers. It's just a dumb idea. I think that teachers, they're not going to be able to handle holding a gun. And, you know, if they get stressed out or, you know, there's something going on in their life, I don't feel that teachers should have it. Although I can see tasers as a you know, alternative, because they're not going to kill people, and, you know, they're meant to, you know, bring someone down but not kill them at the same time. So I think that tasers would be an alternative, and, you know, there's no need for a teacher to have a gun in the classroom.
I agree with that in saying that many teachers should not be allowed to have any sort of firearm because many of them are untrained. You probably didn't know that many teachers do not have their gun permits. And to give them and teach them, it would have to just be like teaching police officers. And that would just be, I don't know about you, a lot of tax money. I know that's a pretty big deal. But it's also unnecessary because how many school shootings happen that are from children going into schools with guns, or children going into school with some sort of weapon that just makes things break out? How many teachers do you think would actually be able to handle shooting a child? I don't think that's kind of feasible for the normal person to be able to handle. So.
Okay, we already discussed the Second Amendment, brief as it is. You can't vote at this point, but when you can vote, do you think you will want to know where your candidate stands on gun control? Will their willingness to pass gun control affect your vote?
Yes. I mean, if they're gonna allow like everyone to have fully loaded weapons, you know, I'm definitely gonna sway towards the other person because as I said, I don't see how people should have fully loaded weapons.
I think that if a candidate is amazing, he has great points of view on just all sort of broad topics, and he just has this one quality of he wants to give people guns no matter what side, Republican or Democrat, whatever he is or she is. I feel like it definitely would impact my vote in the future, but you also have to look at a bigger picture that I know this is a big problem now, but there are cabinets that normally aren't as very controlled by our current president, but definitely our government in general is made as a democracy to try and prohibit mass just voting towards one topic because everyone can agree on that topic because they're all pro whatever. And it makes it kind of difficult to have good things happen sometimes. But.
Did you participate in the walk-up at Bethlehem a few weeks ago? And if so, do you plan to have another one join the other one on April 20th, the University of Columbine?
I did not attend the first one because there was rumors going around the school that they changed it about the kids to fully about gun control. And I got misinformed, so I did not attend. However, I will attend the next one.
I did attend the walkout at school, and I will be attending the next one because I feel it is a big deal to be able to go out in your school and you can feel safe. It's not okay for people to go into their school and have to be scared going into their school. With the walkout, I don't feel as if it was very effective. It was as depressing as it is to say. People were chanting. People were standing outside holding signs. There was videos going around. But people just didn't take it seriously. It's the same thing with the lockdown drills, and it's probably going to be the same thing for the next few years. Kids aren't going to take it seriously until it happens, and then something does occur, and then they finally something goes off in their brain, and then they're just like, wait, my world isn't perfect. And I really hope that this next walkout is going to be more effective in alarming people and just acknowledging that the people who died in the Florida shooting, they were just like you. They were just living normal lives, and now, well, they're not. And this can happen, and this isn't a perfect world that we live in. People need to be aware of things that are going on.
The biggest issue with the walkout was that they didn't make it mandatory, and it gave the kids options to say, I'm not going to go to this, I'm not going to go to that. And I think that they should definitely make it mandatory, or they should have an assembly with everyone talking about this.
Oh, also, I think the attendance rate of the school is actually lower for the since like past like 2 years or something like that. Because kids' parents wouldn't let them go to school because of the walkout, which I don't feel is okay, but that's their parental supervision. They can do what they want, but I don't think it's okay for people to close their kids off from their own political views.
What do you think that the adults in our community can do, or might be able to do to keep students safe?
I think that the biggest issue is that we just allow people to walk in and out of the schools, and just a week ago, there was a kid who just held off a yellow sheet of paper, and that's what the passes are, the yellow sheets of paper, but he just held it up and he was able to leave the school, but it was just a yellow piece of paper, it wasn't a pass to leave the school. And unfortunately, it was so that he couldn't commit suicide, and I was talking, there were people on the phone, trying to prevent him from doing that. But the issue about that is that nobody stopped him because there wasn't enough, security, they didn't, actually check the pass. They're like, okay, I'll let you go. So if we're able to let, a student leave the school willy-nilly, who's to say we're not going to allow somebody to come into the school with a gun? Where I don't think that, we're putting, enough security at the doors, allowing people in and out.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. Is people definitely, or adults in general, could be much more cautious of many of the problems that go on in the school, and they need to make it safer. I don't know personally what could happen. Maybe metal detectors on the doors. Maybe actually lock the doors during the school day. Maybe check passes. Just some general ideas that they used to enforce. I also think that it might be a good idea just to have something more than just hall monitors going around, just looking in the halls, because I'm not sure if you've seen them, but all of them are almost oblivious. So let's just say you're walking down a certain hallway. There's one person sitting at a desk at the very end. They're probably on their phone. You can walk out that door, and they will probably not know. And the safety just in general at that school is, I feel, it's more threatening than actual safety. They threaten that they're going to do this. They say that they're going to do this. Has it ever happened? No.
I think one of the things that was most upsetting to me when I talked to these young men a few days ago was to learn that they were not allowed to discuss any of these issues in a school auditorium or in their classes. And I think that we, however many of us live in the Bethlehem area or outside of it, I feel the school is shirking its responsibility to their students. And I guess what I would urge is perhaps we get some kind of call-in campaign or a letter-writing campaign to the superintendent and the principal and say, excuse me, but this is a school problem that we're discussing. We're talking about school gun violence. These children, these young people need to be encouraged and taught how to have civil discussions. The reason they say they won't talk about these things is because it's too controversial. They used to have debate clubs when I was a kid, 100 years ago, but it seems to me that we should be encouraging our school administrations to encourage
Yes.
an opportunity for the students to talk about, even if they come on differing sides. So what? Have the discussion. Let people get their thoughts and feelings out. And they may differ in many, many different ways, but to be silent when this many children are being exposed to gun violence and killed is irrational, in my opinion, for the town of Bethlehem. To be just shoving it under the rug and not giving the kids an opportunity. They should be encouraging this opportunity for discussion. So I'm going to shut up, and if anybody wants to ask a question or make a comment in the back.
Yeah. First of all, thanks a lot for coming and sharing the views. It's been very interesting. So, you know, after Parkland, there was this spontaneous kind of uprising among students. And all over the country, high school and younger students in particular, speaking out, taking actions, walking out, doing marches, getting on television, posting things online, all sorts of stuff. And what was really interesting was that a lot of it was geared towards trying to get the government to change the laws. In other words, there was real political activism on a scale that I had never seen in my lifetime amongst your age group. And so it's been very inspiring. And I'm just wondering, do you guys consider yourself as part of this like nationwide movement? Or are there other students in your school who seem to be part of it? And even though maybe you're not allowed to have the conversations in class or whatever, are there just amongst the students yourselves, is this kind of thing being talked about? In other words, specifically what I mean is taking actions to try to get laws changed about guns in particular.
I'm not a part of the marches, but me and my friends, whenever this happens, if we're not allowed to talk about it in class, we talk about it in the halls all the time. So, you know, if there's like a shooting, we talk about it. You know, the thing, you know, yesterday with YouTube, you know, that was a terrible incident as well. You know, we talk about these things in the halls, you know. With my program, I'm allowed to talk about it more, but with Nick, he's not allowed to as much because he's in the regular school and they're not allowed to talk about these things because, oh, it's too controversial, you know, people's feelings are going to get hurt. And, I don't care if people's feelings are going to get hurt. We need to talk about it. You know, your feelings are going to get hurt if you talk about this in the real world. I mean, it's, you got to get over it.
Right.
So I pretty much have same feelings as Adam, but I do know some people who are more involved, specifically just kids in the student senate, and specifically our principal, that is trying to bring up some sort of uprising to make our school more involved, to make the kids more involved in these things that are happening. Now, although they are trying, it's extraordinarily difficult because trying to put up signs, posters for this event in our school, too controversial. And he wasn't allowed to give me permission to put up signs in the hall that said, come to this event and talk. So, and not specifically, it wasn't just him that was saying that, it was secretaries that were saying that. It was higher-ups and just rules that he had to follow as a principal.
Did you find these exercises that you did in school causing any increased fear inside of you? Do you feel they were helpful, or did they engender anxiety?
I don't think that it makes me fearful. It does make me cautious because whenever these things happen, I take them seriously, and you know, I do think about, you know, what if someone came to the classroom, what would I do? You know, if someone, you know, came in with a gun, you know, I do think about that while that's happening, but I don't think that's going to make me more fearful about these things.
I definitely think I did fear it at one point, in elementary school specifically, since it was taken so seriously and so strictly. But I feel also that teachers aren't taking it as seriously, and in general, students aren't taking it as seriously.
Are
So
not?
it's
Are not taking it?
no, they're not. So it's kind of loosening the chain a bit on many of the problems, and I don't think people really understand, as I've said many a time before, that it could happen. So
I had, at the very beginning when we were talking about the exercises, I was also wondering,
Speak up a little bit.
I was also wondering if it made you feel scared on some level. And you're saying you weren't, but I guess I'd like to go to the second part, which is that you're being silenced, that you're really being infantilized in a way, because you're the people who would be the victims if it happened, but you're not even allowed to talk about it. And so on some level, you don't even know how you feel really, because you might, because you're talking with your friends about it. But you don't, if you don't get a chance to really have a conversation, to find out how other people feel compared to you. And also the fact that you're not taking it seriously, or some of the students aren't. How could you? I mean, you've been totally disempowered. I mean, how can you really feel it's real when you're not even allowed to examine your feelings, to voice opinions? I mean, I guess I feel really upset that you're in that situation.
I feel that we're shunned because I don't think that the principal and, the teachers, understand, that rules are rules, but we still need to have these discussions. And, it is unfortunate that, some of us can't talk about this because, rules are too important to talk about your safety, or, rules are too important to talk about how you feel about, your safety in school. I think it's ridiculous that, a lot of the students don't get to talk about this during their classes.
Supposing there were a voluntary forum held where people would just come if chose to, as opposed to kids in the classroom who are part of a discussion when they don't choose to be or feel differently and aren't prepared to talk and negotiate. I'm just wondering about some sort of independent discussions. I don't mean outside school, but a select group if they chose to talk about it.
Does the school senate itself take any of these issues under consideration to make proposals?
School Senate is very involved with many of the discussions because they're an after-school program, so many of the kind of rules don't exactly apply because it's not usually during the school day. They are the ones who began the walkout, and they are the people that are going to be most involved in the future with many of these walkouts and marches in general. But as you were saying before that you wanted to get more almost like political and more official people to become more involved with the students. Did I get that correctly?
That wasn't what I meant.
Oh,
but
okay.
I just meant supposing some of the students wanted to talk about it. Could there be a format in which they could talk? So, I mean, I know there isn't now, but just a suggestion.
Yeah, yes, definitely the Student Senate is trying to make it more known, and they're trying to make it more talkable with different students, but as said before, it's difficult to get through the walls that are stopping them with all the different rules that kind of negate them from talking about these dilemmas.
After all of this, all of the things, the lockdowns and all of that, do you guys feel that you're really prepared
No.
for the reality?
No one's
No.
prepared
Not at all.
to, be under fire.
So who do you have to represent you? To your peers, not your peers, I mean to the older people in your school? Oh, well, to the administration. Do you think they would hear you?
No, because they don't care. I mean, they obviously don't care.
How about your parents?
I think that our parents do care a lot, because my parents do feel that, that we're not being able to talk about it. But
And maybe you should be telling your parents, you would love for them to get together and go to the administration or the school board.
It could happen.
Think it would be effective?
It could happen. I mean, I don't think one parent is gonna make that difference. You need a big group, you need a lot of people with,
the same feelings.
yeah, very similar feelings, which is definitely going to be a problem. Because you don't want people who are having very opposite feelings going to this and saying, well, my kid wants to talk about it, my kid doesn't want to talk about it, my kid wants to da-da-da. It could be many things, and to bring it up to parents, it's not that they wouldn't be involved, and it's not that they wouldn't try, but it's very difficult to see, like, hey, I'm trying to get my child involved in the world more. And that, I don't know about you, but that's very difficult for some people to comprehend, that their children are growing up and they're trying to make a difference with the world that they're going to be living in.
I want to sort of reassure you, since I've been around a lot longer than you, 50 years beyond getting out of high school. The thing you participated in was unprecedented as far as I know in American history. All of the years, all of the kids, all of the schools that were walking was absolutely awesome. I went through the Vietnam War project, and you guys outnumbered us 10 to 1 on any given day. So that was, and if it drops to half of that, don't be discouraged. You have made a tremendous unifying thing, and keep it up. And so don't lose it. You have got the attention of people all over who, when they know that some seniors are going to vote this November, we're now in school. There are people in elected offices all over who are paying attention. Quietly. They don't want to encourage you, but
They'll find every way they can to keep you from getting registered.
regarding not being able to talk about this, I imagine that on the day, on the day one of these things happens, it's got to be chilling to the kids in the schools who are in schools like that school, and frightening. I've been a teacher. I can imagine trying to deal with the anxiety of your own as well as all the kids. At Newtown, teachers without body armor and without weapons went and tried to stop that guy with an automatic weapon. They died trying. But that's who the teachers are. And but you talk about it. I think it would be a good thing. It's something that the school district has to grapple with. We have issues of trigger warnings. We have issues of people, some of the kids have had sexual abuse. We had a law proposed to try to deal with some of that, and it didn't, I don't think it didn't make it. It didn't make it, but it's current events. Now, in your classes, that could be talked about, but I'm sure it's something that would cause great anxiety, because the teacher's going to say, what am I going to do if one of my kids has a meltdown about this issue? So I have some sympathy, but I do think they need to. You're in an AP class. What kind of AP was that?
AP World History.
Okay, so, talking about things of violence is probably part of it. So, that probably ought to be worked out somehow in that lowest class. And if you want to have an influence on this, like you said, there's the principal, there's the superintendent, there's the elected school board for the Bethlehem School District. They all have phone numbers, you can find them. And beyond that, there's the state education department. We have a board of regents, a person for every judicial district representing and setting up the curriculums. All those people are officially there with
I suspect some of the hesitation for discussing this is because there's a great emotional charge in this. And maybe, I think they're probably concerned about adult teachers who are not trained to handle a child that has a very adverse reaction And one of the ways to do this instead is to have someone who is trained as a facilitator who can be there in a group. And I think you students should ask the school, we want an avenue to talk about this with a trained facilitator who can help us to discuss this and help us to feel more comfortable is not the word, but to be able to talk about it. And if we have a reaction, this person knows how to deal with that. Like a counselor or somebody.
Yeah,
Somebody
we have
who's
social
got,
workers and counselors, so.
yeah.
Do you have
Well,
a child psychologist at your school?
We only have counselors. We have about probably 8 counselors. So that's a plus. But
Well,
we
you
should
should
have
count, if you had an event
one
like
sort of
this, how much would that
segment.
cost the school? And let's take that money and put it into somebody who can help to talk about it.
Michael?
It seems to me that at least some, if not many, of the perpetrators of mass killings in schools have been part of that school or that community and have felt very alienated, excluded perhaps. To what extent does the Bethlehem High School deal with the issue of individual alienation of students? Do you know students not as potential killers, but do you know many students who feel really excluded? And what is the school, and what are you doing about it? And what is the school doing about that sense of alienation?
Unfortunately, I am the type of kid who talks to everyone. I talk to a lot of kids, and one of my friends is, you know, he's very alienated because he's different. He's not like everyone else. So, you know, he's always telling me how, you know, no one really pays attention to him and how he's just like, he's, you know, invisible to everyone else. And, you know, I see like tons of kids in the school because I can notice, you know, the difference between the kid who, you know, who's happy and then the kid who's just like, you know, by himself. Because, you know, I was in a study hall and there's a kid sitting all the way by himself and, you know, no one was talking to him. And in fact, he was one of my friends and a lot of kids would make fun of him because he had a stutter. And, you know, that's very unfortunate, but the school doesn't really, you know, invest into the students. They only care about, you know, sports or, you know, the rules, because they're not really seeing what's going on in the school. They're not seeing how the kids feel, and they're not trying to help the kids who are by themselves.
There's laws that are supposed to, against bullying.
Yeah.
There are laws against bullying, and the school has to go by those guidelines.
It's funny that you say that because, you know, there's a lot of people who make fun of kids in the school, and, you know.
And nobody reports it?
No, nobody really reports it, you know. I've had to stand up for a number of my friends who have disabilities.
Thank you, that's good.
And in middle school, it was so hard because, you know, my friend, the same friend that I was talking about, you know, he loves Transformers, so he's making the sounds about the Transformers, and there's kids, you know, staring at him and laughing at him, and I had to walk up to him and I was like, you know, what are you laughing at? And they're like, oh, you know, he's being weird. I'm like, so what? He's being weird. He's just a human being. He's being weird when we're not being weird. You know, everyone's weird in their own individual ways, you know. There's no reason that you should be laughing about it, but, you know, the school doesn't pay attention to this.
But you guys haven't been given information to who to go to if you're being bullied?
We've been given information, but none of the kids do that because, you know, I don't know, none of the kids, you know, really go to people. They keep it to themselves, you know, they don't say anything, they
Well,
speak out.
you guys, You, and you think that too? I mean, it's a good school, why would they do that?
Question back here, Leslie.
Not
What's
really
your
many,
question?
there are not many bullying signs. It's bullying in the school. I feel
Very subtle.
it's very subtle in the ways that kids go up and then they say a few mean words, then they leave. Other kid is depressed and he goes in a corner and cries. He doesn't want to express his feelings because he's scared. He doesn't want to go up to his parents because he doesn't want them to get involved. I personally have firsthand experience with getting bullied. I was bullied since I was 5, all through middle school, and eventually I just kind of stood up to him and I told him down and dealt with it in a way that I probably shouldn't have, but looking back on it, made me look pretty freaking cool. And now that kid is scared of me, tries to be my friend. Talk to him all the time now. He's just like, hey dude, what's going on? I'm just like, I still hate you.
That's a great boy.
But
Okay, I'm sorry. Given the topic, of course, I came here tonight prepared to be horrified by a number of things, but of all the things that happened here tonight, the most horrifying is you're not allowed to talk about this. And I have to wonder about a number of things related to that. Okay, one, what other topics are you not allowed to talk about? Two, the teachers, it's a serious question, by the way, unfortunately. Are the teachers in the teachers' lounge or wherever, are they allowed to have conversations, or is everybody into see no evil, hear no evil, all of that? And Bethlehem High is supposed to be one of the best high schools in the capital region. And really. And that makes this even more horrifying. And of course, one of the roles of your high school is to prepare people for college. I'm retired now, but I taught at UAlbany for many, many years. People who aren't talking about things like this in high school, they're going to be in total shock when they get to college. I mean, really. You guys are wonderful, but I'm not so sure your school is.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the problems I understand at Parkland was that the killer was actually taught how to shoot through a JROTC program at the school. Do you have programs like that at Bethlehem?
we do not have any sort of shooting or any hunting or any
That's
sort of
good.
in any way violent program. I think the most violent program we have is in PE, and it's called EKP. EKP?
Yeah.
It's a form of self-defense, if you didn't know, and it is extremely ineffective.
It seems to me that if you don't discuss these things in school, in the class, you are doing it in the hallways, because you just said you were, that you're discussing them anyway. So it's not that they don't get discussed, it's that they don't get discussed in a formal setting where people can deal with them in some structured way, which would be much better. But I really think that this is really part of the whole dumbing down of education in the United States. You might not know this, but when my kids were in Bethlehem High, around the time of the Iraq War, there was another walkout from Bethlehem High. Students walked out and they marched down to the post office, because that was the only federal building they could find in the area, and held an anti-war protest. And it didn't just happen in Bethlehem, it happened in schools throughout the Capital District. And at that time, Bethlehem Neighbors for Peace talked to the principal of the school, who happened to have a kid fighting over in Iraq, and we said, we'd like to do a forum for your students on the war. And he said, okay. And we went to the assembly and had this discussion. So there's a big change
Yeah.
that's going on, and I think it has to do with some of this stuff. And I think part of the reason they don't want you to talk about it is because they don't want you to make the connections between the school shootings, and by and large, if you look at it, all the school shooters, by the way, have been white.
Yep.
And the shootings that are happening in the black community, especially by cops, like the one that just happened in Sacramento and the one that happened yesterday in New York City, and the wars, where the guns and the same companies that make these guns are killing people by the millions, and they don't want you to have that discussion. I really think that is part of this whole thing. And one other thing that comes from the film, where they talked about blacks not having guns, they didn't want blacks to have guns.
Yeah.
You should know about the Second Amendment, because you don't hear about it really. If you listen to what was read, it didn't say militias to protect the country, it said militias to protect the state. Because the Second Amendment came out of militias that they wanted to have as squads in the South to ensure that slaves were not going to rebel and that they could kill slaves. And they had militias like in the state of Georgia, where every male, white male only, had to join the militia, and they had these slave patrols to make sure, and despite that, there were hundreds of slave rebellions that took place in the South. But this was the reason for that Second Amendment in the first place. And it still goes on that way. They still don't want it in the hands of blacks, they only want it in the hands of whites. And we in Bethlehem Neighbors for Peace and in this community had an example of that. Again, you might not know it, but a man who had his kids go through Bethlehem High, his name was Imam Umar, he spoke against the war in Iraq, and so they fired him from his jobs, and they eventually went after him because he had two guns. He had a .22 rifle and he had a shotgun. He had these for 25 years, but back when he was 16, he had a felony against him. So apparently there was a federal law saying he couldn't. They tried to put him in jail for 10 years. And he went to the NRA and said, well, defend me, I have guns. And they said, no, we're not going to defend you. They don't want to defend anybody that's black. So there's a racial issue that's in this. And it's those kinds of connections that when you talk about these things in a real serious way, that you start drawing them and start understanding what's going on in your society. And it's really a terrible thing that you can't discuss those in your schools.
I was wondering about the march that took place, if either of you took, I guess one of you said you didn't take part in the march. Or maybe that was a school walkout. I mean, I'm talking about the march all over the country and the world against gun violence. And I think there's some people over in your schools that are very active in this work against gun violence. Is that not true?
Yes, actually, I believe that one of our students actually spoke at the march.
Yes, she did, and she was very effective.
And I didn't even know that was going on because I wasn't, on my phone hearing about that. So unfortunately, I didn't go just because I didn't know about it. But I did, see that online, and she did a very good job.
So I want to know how that's continuing. And as older people here, many of us are, we're counting on you guys to step up here.
I'm hoping that we can stay involved in this, but sadly, it's starting to kind of slow down that schools are becoming less and less involved because they keep getting dragged down. This is news. This is not happening. It's not real. It's not going to happen to you. We're going to be safe, and we're going to give everyone guns, and it's all going to be okay. And most obviously, Student Senate and the principal are trying to become more involved, and kids are trying to be more involved in the politics and more involved in many of the issues that are occurring. No matter if it's only a school shooting, it can be something in a bombing, any sort of massacre that even happened in France when the ISIS attacks were happening. People want to be involved. People want to help. We are being dragged down and we're unable to help because honestly, we're being shunned.
By whom?
School and overall government, to be quite honest. They throw you right in the hole. They don't want to be involved in this. They want to make you feel as if you are in this happy little place. They want to make it so that America can be a perfect country. And
Well, we just gotta fight back like we have over the years, and the trouble is it comes around again too. I mean, we fought a lot of these battles a long time ago, and here we are, still fighting it, and we need your help.
history does repeat itself. So hopefully, we will get through this.
Yes, Wendy?
A little bit concerned about the doors to the school not being locked. I went for a job interview. I live in Columbia County, and I went for a job interview for a school nurse a couple of years ago, and I couldn't get in. You know, the doors were locked, and I had to buzz, I think, or maybe I got through the first set of doors, but I'm pretty sure that the doors were locked, and from getting buzzed in, I went to a window, and they called down who I was meeting. So I'm kind of concerned that the school doors aren't locked and that we could just stroll in there.
Okay, so with our,
There are
some of them are locked. And it's only the first set of doors. Mind you that. There are 2 sets of doors, only the first set are locked. And you press a little buzzer, there's a hall monitor that looks out, and then she's just like, oh, that's a kid. Doors unlocked.
Do you have cameras outside your door, outside the doors?
Honestly, yeah, I have no idea. They are all over the school, no idea if they are outside.
And there is somebody you have to sign in.
Right
near the door.
You like scan your ID quickly?
Well, no, for people that are not.
Oh, strangers, yes, you need to sign.
Deliver something to the high school.
You do a sign-in form
Sign
that
and
you,
do all this stuff.
to get into the school, but honestly, with the doors, so going on what you said, they have the windows in the side that you go to check in.
Yeah.
We have one of those, right in the entrance near the gym, right? It is currently walled off.
It's been there since the 60s.
Yes, exactly. And now it is not being used. For a reason I don't honestly know.
We can't just guess.
Go ahead. Even, you guys, were you gonna be able to vote soon, or? 2 years. Well, you know, you don't have to wait until you can vote. Write your congress people. That's right. And tell them, you want the gun laws to be adjusted to be fair. There's no reason why you can't speak up to them. Any of your, all of you kids. Doesn't matter, I don't think they worry about your age, it doesn't matter, you still count. And you can make an impact that way.
We can. It's just that there need to be more and more people involved.
But you can do it.
Yes,
And you can set an example, and you can tell other people that you did it, and encourage them to also do it.
It's all about the follow through with it. And many
You
kids,
can send them an email.
you send them that, and then they'll say, I will do it. I'm going to do it.
But if you hold funding
The thing is, you're going to be voting in a couple of years, and politicians are notorious for, they'll listen to you and say they're working on it, so that is a problem. But with BNP, the people that are in this room have been going after politicians for many, 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 many years, and meeting with politicians and trying to get the issues discussed and altered in any way that they can. I think for me, what I'm hearing is I think it would be really beneficial if they had some adult support within the school system to encourage them to be civic-minded. You know, this is all, they're going to be civilians in this country who have a right to vote and who are going to participate and be affected by laws. And they have, seemingly at this age, they have a commitment, even at 15 and 16, they are interested. But I think if it isn't supported by some adults as well, that it's a much tougher road to go alone. And I really think that they can do it. They certainly can send emails. But I think, I'm just so upset about the school system itself not offering an opportunity for these kids to express their opinions and their anxieties. And I agree, having a social worker or a counselor or whatever who can be there to supervise and make sure that somebody, if somebody does have a severe adverse reaction to the discussion. But that doesn't mean don't have the discussion, in my opinion.
I just back on this school safety with the door thing. And I'm thinking about, I don't have children, but I've been to like PTA and school board meetings. And I think that like the community could go to like a PTA or a school board meeting and you know, on behalf of the students, bring up the issue if these doors are not being carefully monitored and people are just being allowed to flow in and out. I think members of the community could go and bring up these issues.
It would be a very good idea to have some of these PTA meetings or whatever the school board does, school board meetings, some be monitored and see what they say. But you know that one person just standing there and just kind of watching, that's going to change something for what everyone in that room is going to be saying. They're going to want to please whoever's sitting in there taking notes.
I know when I've been to those meetings, I remember that there was a student representative, actually, because I was there for a vote, I think. It's been a while, you know, but there was a student representative. I don't know if the student senate goes to school board meetings or PTA meetings.
I think the key word of what you just said is it's been a while. And well, it's true. I don't think a student has really been involved with that kind of thing in years.
And it may be different where I live than it is here too. It may be that school system, you know,
Oh.
maybe something to entertain.
I know for sure that our school, students aren't really involved with the schools. Like, I shouldn't say the school itself, but with the rules that apply in the school.
It may be a thought to have a student representative to the school board.
It
You know,
definitely would
maybe
impact
somebody
it.
from the Senate, or maybe somebody in an independent group to be an advocate, you know, voice for the students of the board. Or maybe somebody in the community here wants to go. I mean, I think I'll start getting back to school board meetings. I go to town board meetings, but maybe a little more.
Yeah, well, I think as far as the topics of communications, there's really two different things we're talking about. One is, what's the experience of students like in the schools and how they feel about it? And the other one is, what's the public policy that's involved, in other words, the gun laws? And these conversations overlap. And I think really a lot of the reason why the schools are shutting this down is because if there was any conversation in the classrooms or in an assembly or anywhere about regulating guns, that would be so controversial that you would have people who are NRA members, supporters, you know, possibly coming into school, disrupting the school board meetings, maybe even threatening, maybe even coming into school with a gun and threatening. Because, you know, the NRA has been so, and Fox News as well, have been so successful at this propaganda. You saw in the film a couple people saying their greatest fear is of the government. And in these people's minds, the school represents the government. And, you know, they're totally afraid that there's going to be this massive takeover and repression of everybody, and it's up to them and their guns to stop that from happening. And I think the school principals and supervisors are very aware of irate citizens, not necessarily the NRA as a whole, but just irate citizens who avidly support gun rights, getting all upset and making a big trouble for them. And my guess is that's why they don't want these conversations happening in any kind of official way in the school. But that means what has to happen is there have to be unofficial ways of it happening. And you mentioned, for example, in the evening there are student clubs that meet, etc. And maybe there's even a student newspaper sometimes, or things like that, where there has to be ways where you can have the discussions and don't really put the school administration on the line for them to get in a whole lot of trouble about it. And just as a kind of a related thing, recently in the last year I moved up to Bern, which is southwestern Albany County up in the hill towns. And you know, it's interesting because what's happening up there and has been happening for the last few years, with all the local governments that I can tell, the town boards and the town governments and even the libraries and the school boards and whatever, are really being infested by this extreme right-wing attack and basically obstructionism of very few people who are very intense and very angry and very rude and just coming in and sometimes making threats or just making so much trouble that it basically obstructs the business of the town or whatever the entity is from happening. And you know, I've only lived there for a few months, but in all, like in the weekly newspaper, you read letter after letter after letter about this phenomenon that's going on. And it's something that I think a lot of our institutions are having to figure out how to deal with. And it's really, this is what it reminds me of.
Well, fear is another form of censorship, self-censored, because we're afraid to speak out, because we're afraid of rattling somebody. It's a terrible dilemma. Yes?
I just wanted to say that I really am very grateful that you shared your own true experiences and true feelings with us. And I think some of us might have tried to lecture you a little bit about history or what we think you should do. But I guess what I would wish for you, not just you, but your whole student body, is that you do find a way to look inside and see what you want to do in your school, what changes you might want to make, or how you might want to express yourselves. And I don't know what that would be, but whatever it is, I hope you have the feeling that you can do it. I feel you're so disempowered. I mean, like they really are trying to shut you down, and I hope you can find a way to say no to the bullies, basically.
Yes.
No.
Is it okay if I add
Sure.
a final statement? So going back on the thing with the big idea of fear of our government is many people are like, oh no, I don't want to get my guns taken away. I have an AR-15, I have a shotgun. What's the difference if I go into a school with a shotgun or an AR-15? That's the big argument that they come up with. And then they say, oh, I want a silencer now, because I'm clearly going to go only hunting with a silencer. I'm going to go into the woods, which I don't know if it's populated. Ooh, I see a deer with this, and I have a silencer. Oh, I'm going to shoot the deer. I have no idea if anyone else is around me, and of course I have the silencer on my gun. They can't hear a thing. They won't be able to hear that shot. And I know this is kind of going off the topic of guns and going into more legality of silencers, but I'm not sure if you know who knows of Maxim. Have you ever heard that name before?
No.
So Maxim was that man who made the Maxim gun. This was a fully automatic turret that was used during World War II. So when people would come out of their trenches and go run up, Maxim guns were set up and mow everyone down, all horses, just everything. They're all dead. So his son, something Maxim, I forget his first name, I'm sorry. He invented the silencer. He made it and specifically said with it, this militaristic item is used to stealthily kill enemies, both at war and international conflicts. And now people are saying, I want a silencer just so I can go hunt my enemy. Oh, it's a deer. Oh, it could be a person. Why? It shouldn't be legal. And the argument that people should be allowed to have any type of weapon is just almost idiotic. Because, again, saying an AR-15 and a shotgun, or an AR-15 and a sniper rifle, or a hunting rifle and a .50 caliber sniper rifle, they're all the same because they all can shoot bullets. It's ridiculous, it's stupid. Exactly. And it's sad to know that this is what our government is kind of dealing with. They're just like, do we want to make old people that have guns mad and then leave our citizens performing illegal actions, getting guns and through other resources? Now our good citizens that have gun permits just have pistols against them, which you got a bunch of people with pistols. It isn't a good thing either. But if you got someone who has an AR-15 that they got illegally, and you have a person with a pistol, who's going to win? It's a very difficult topic, and truly, the sad part is, there is no answer. There is no right or wrong. I mean, there's some that are more wrong, but there isn't one just concrete one. I mean, there is, in a perfect world, no one would have guns. Everyone would be able to just live peacefully. We wouldn't have conflicts with North Korea. We wouldn't have conflicts with ISIS. All of us would just be giving each other hugs. But clearly,
All right, any last question or comment by anyone?
Joe,
Oh, Joe, go ahead. You were
No,
going to make a
I
few
already spoke,
statements.
that's okay.
You sure?
He has something to say.
Okay, go ahead.
So he was talking about the silencer for hunting, but I don't know if you know, but there's this thing called a bow, and that's more silent than, you know, a gun, a silencer. So I don't get why people want silencers for killing deer, and it's just ridiculous. And apparently there was a statement about, you know, the reason why they're, you know, making silencers legal is so that we can protect people's ears, and I'm just like, don't shoot the guns.
I think the movies take care of that.
Well, this has been very, go ahead.
Well, Leslie, I think they raised one point that they have a Senate that operates after school. They probably, someplace in the town, we have Boy Scouts and
Right.
other kind of clubs. And in a way, it would be good to have a club that was sort of looked at civic life.
Right.
That they would look at how the town functions. You know, there's town does lots of things. It does zoning. It says what you can put in your front yard. And they're elected people, like you said, and they have to deal with the constituents. And so if there were kids who wanted to have a political action club to learn how to do this sort of thing, they could learn how to be a real pain to the elected officials.
Right, exactly.
so you're saying like kind of like a participation in government kind of after
But an
school.
ongoing after school,
Yeah.
and it might help to have some, you know, interested leaders go seeking school kids. The NRA seeks to have a junior rifle business.
Right.
Marine Corps will have somebody in there recruiting to the senior high. Nobody's in there recruiting, as far as I can tell, just for political. Maybe it should be League of Women Voters or something like that. But or a new thing.
There is Student Peace Action Network, SPAN.
There is, huh? But it probably has to sound more
Student Peace Action
neutral.
Network.
Mhm. This is
Well, I
all.
just think that, I think we have to open up spaces where kids can be encouraged and also taught how to talk civilly to one another, because we don't have that example in our government. We have, you know.
Well, they're just gonna get it
And
done.
we need, I think we need to start really taking to heart what our children are learning every day when they turn on the TV and they hear or read these tweets. There's no civil discourse anymore, and just because you come at a subject on opposite sides, you still have to be able to have civil discourse and let us get along in this world. And I think that's one of the things. Do they have a debate club in the school anymore?
It's not a priority.
That's not a priority, is right? But anyway, I'm going to say thank you all
Because it's
for
not
being
intentional.
Yeah, I got a question for them. All the teachers and all the people that work there have ID cards.
Yes,
I
that's
think it'd be any advantage for students to be having an ID card that's showing.
Students actually do have ID cards normally. They are like a year or two off because they represent last year's pictures, which haunt you. But the IDs,
You don't display them.
no, you don't display them. I mean, me personally, just because it's easy to keep, but like I keep it in my wallet. But realistically, it's not like anybody really checks it. Like you go into the school and you scan it quickly. You use it for lunch because you want to buy some food. You want to rent a book. You use it for that, and that's about it.
Student discounts.
But you need to scan it, you need to scan it to get into the school?
No,
No.
You
If
just
you're a-
walk, like,
if you're a kid, they'll just be like, oh, that's a student, sorry.
and if like you're getting off the bus, you just walk right in through the doors. I know, right? I love it. And especially since there's no sort of like any way security, and especially since the main entrance for buses isn't the most popular part of the school. It's literally in the cafeteria.
It's right next to the cafeteria.
You literally walk probably 5 steps, there's the cafeteria. You keep walking straight, there's the A wing. That wing is literally probably the highway to get to every class. You take a few steps down after you go past the cafeteria, there's the auditorium and a gym.
So what do you think, just off, we have to quit because we're going to get kicked out of the library. But if there was a school shooting in a school in this community, what do you think would change first?
I think that guns would be changed, and the safety of the school would be changed first. I feel like that, parents and everyone would be like, oh, we need to protect the students a lot more, so they feel like, that's not the security, but they don't fund it.
It doesn't happen.
Exactly.
And I think that's the same thing with a lot of teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
They feel invincible, so they don't think anything's ever going to happen to us.
I mean,
And Parkland didn't think so either. Those kids.
We were the same way when we were kids.
think that they are invincible, and they're
I
So that was good, I made it through.
All right. When I was a kid, we had air raid.